On today's episode, Josh and I are going to have our very first featured guest, Mr. Nick LaVere, founder of NABL, the basketball league. We bring him on to talk about the league itself and bring awareness to it and what it is about. We talk some NBA playoff game one takeaways, get Nick's award predictions, and it wouldn't be a Two Pointers podcast episode without putting Nick and Josh through some NBA themed trivia. All that next. Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. A little disclaimer here at the beginning. This is Trevor in post-edit here coming in to introduce the episode. We forgot to do so in the beginning. First time having a guest on. This is just Trevor jumping in here to say welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. Hope you enjoyed the interview we put together here. Really enjoyed our time with Nick. I know Josh here, I'm speaking on his behalf. He thinks the same as well. And we look forward to you guys enjoying the episode. See you next week.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Nick LaVere, and I wanted to talk. First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on the podcast, and I want to talk about the National Ability Basketball League and what the National Ability Basketball League is. It's going to be the first ever professional basketball league for special needs kids, where they can get paid and become a true professional athlete. They can work on their craft every single day. They don't need another job. They just focus on the game of basketball itself and nothing else. You see a lot of these kids. As a society, they never have the fair enough opportunities in life to succeed in life, right? You see, after they get out of their transition programs and things like that, you only see them get the minimum wage kind of jobs, right? So you only see them working at restaurants. You're only seeing them working at like fast food places, gyms, grocery stores, things like that, and doing like maintenance work and things like that. But for what I've seen with my younger brother has autism, and I worked with hundreds of special needs kids when it comes to basketball. I coach softball and done best buddies and things like that. These kids are really, really intelligent, but as a society, they just never get the fair chances in life to succeed. And that's what NABL wants to change.
Well, awesome, man. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions in regards to just the next steps for where the league is. And I guess you got your inspiration. I did a little bit of reading on you before you're on here. So first of all, wanted to open it up and say, welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. Like we said, Nick is here to talk about NABL and NABL, as I now learned about 5 minutes ago. That's how you say it. So I'm glad to know that. That's really awesome. I had a question for you in regards to just where it started. I know you mentioned the inspiration of your younger brother, but just you mentioned the vision, obviously, of being able to have it on a professional level. I guess my biggest thing is, where is your vision for it in the next 5 years? And what does that look like for, obviously something you want to do to change, obviously be the change that you want to see in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the next 5 years, hopefully I could go global with this, right? So as of right now, the plan is we want to start real small, because we just don't know exactly like how many like viewerships we could have either at the arenas that we're going to be having people able to go to these games, or, being able to stream the games, how many people would stream them if they couldn't attend and things like that, right? So we want to start off in the Midwest region, have each state in the Midwest have a team, and go from there. And after that, hopefully I'll have every state in the U.S. would have a team. But the biggest problem is, transportation can be a problem for these games when you're traveling like out of state and things like that. And that's because, a lot of these kids with disabilities aren't going to be able to, fly, on a plane and things like that. So I think we're just going to keep it in regions, so the transportation wouldn't be a problem. So it would just be like long bus rides, if anything like that, and just have like regional championships and things like that.
That's awesome, Nick. I enjoyed I've looked through your website and read into NABL. Could you give us all kind of an update? Like, where is the league at right now? What are you working on currently?
Yeah. So where the league is right now is, we're in talks with potential sponsors and things like that, because, when I came up with this idea and with this league, of course, COVID had a hit, and it really, like, the plans for everything really just had to shift. And obviously it's still shifting now because, COVID's still out there, and, things are starting to open up a little bit, but, not really. We're not fully back to normal yet. So I'm in talks with some sports analysts out there from Fox Sports and things like that, and talks with like other like special needs charities and things like that. Been in talks with Special Olympics. Been in talks with actually one of the commissioners from the National Basketball Players Association too. So, they just want to see how I could raise awareness in a way. So I came out with t-shirts and things like that. And I'm actually been in talks with the United Center and the Windy City Bulls, where I could have a one-day playing tournament for 4 to 6 special needs high school teams and have like fans there and things like that. Because I don't know how special needs high school was for you guys, but for us in Illinois, they weren't able to play games this year. They were just practicing and things like that. And it's not really fun if you're just practicing and not having games, especially for special needs kid. Like, they don't really want to practice. They want to get to the real thing. Like, they want to play. Right. And, they haven't been able to play a game in 2 years, right, because of COVID. And I want to bring the sport back into them. Like, they miss not only playing the game of basketball, but they miss all the fans screaming and cheering and things like that, because that's how they thrive, right? And I want to bring that, experience back into their lives one last time. So that's where I'm currently at right now. Just in talks with a lot of people and trying to plan this event together.
Josh, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we're obviously from a very rural area of North Carolina, but I would say we're not far from areas that I don't even think in our bigger cities, areas like Raleigh and Chapel Hill and Durham, like, I don't think they were represented at all. I think it was more on a recreational level than there was no level of competition at any point. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Josh, but I don't remember anything of that nature. So to even hear that it's got a platform of any kind, and obviously in the case where you're at with it, I can't. I mean, I'm that's why I believed in it so heavily, and why I wanted you to come on so bad, because I was like very excited to hear where this was going and where this could go, and where it's already going. You kind of hit on it already with the t-shirts, but is there anywhere right now that the listeners, because we've got some awesome listeners, all 650 of you right now, and expanding and growing each and every day. We appreciate every one of you. Where can they go out and support right now? You mentioned the t-shirts.
Yeah, so we have t-shirts out. Obviously, we have all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you literally just type in like the National Ability Basketball League, you should be able to find it, no problem. Because obviously, there's no other National Ability Basketball League out there and stuff like that. So that's what to be able to find and support, and keep spreading the word, right? Anytime I post something and things like that, they can always not only like favorite, but they can also retweet. They can always share it to other people. They can share it to other families who have like a child with intellectual disabilities and things like that.
Well, awesome, man. We appreciate you coming on and talking about the league, and I'm looking forward to having you back on eventually and hearing the next big steps. And we'll be on the lookout for any major changes you guys can follow. Is it at NABL on Twitter, or is there a different hat? It should be that, right?
Yeah, it should be National Ability Basketball League.
On Twitter. Cool. Awesome. Were you on Twitter the most? That's where we're definitely going to be putting that out there. We'll definitely obviously link in the episode as well. So we look forward to hearing more about it in the future. If anyone else doesn't have anything, we're going to roll right into the playoffs, because that's what people are looking forward to. That's what Josh and I have been hyping up all year, is the playoffs, man. Like, the March Madness was awesome, but I mean, this is like an 80% NBA pod. Let's be real. So
yeah.
we're here to talk about the playoffs, and we could start in the Eastern Conference, Josh, if you want to roll right into it.
All right. So you want me to start by commiserating over the Hornets season, or is that just like?
That's up to you, man. We're gonna block off like a minute, because obviously since last week. Go
if
ahead.
you talk to me on Tuesday, it's probably be a lot longer. But no, I think I've come to terms with all of the getting beat by nearly 30 points in playing game. I don't know. It was it was a disappointing kind of. I remember I was watching the game through the whole night, and I think it was Greg Anthony was calling the game, and he just kept talking about how the Hornets were showing a real lack of effort throughout the game. And I mean, it was probably right, and I think what it really comes down to is the youth and inexperience through the whole team. You're playing a Pacers team that's in the playoffs nearly every year. Those guys have been to that stage before. and then all of our players just weren't ready to be there. But overall, they have to move forward. They have to get ready for move into the offseason and into the next year. But I thought the Pacers played great until they got stopped by Washington. So really, it was just kind of a predictable play-in the East.
That leads me to my first question for Nick, as well as for you, Josh. And I can start with Nick. As a Bulls fan, to be clear to the listeners, how do you feel about the play-in tournament? Since obviously for Josh and I, it's been a week since we've been able to talk about it. Obviously, with your team on the outside looking in, regardless, that's no shot whatsoever. The Bulls are an up-and-coming young team. What are your thoughts on the play-in from either as a fan or just as a Bulls supporter?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, it's been pretty predictable. I had Indiana beating the Hornets, but I just wasn't expecting the Pacers to score 144 points. And what's pretty interesting, I have some of the stats with me. I've written some stuff down that there was 8 Pacers that were in double figures that game. So, I mean, it's very hard to win, when you got 8 players, the opponents have players that have 10 or plus more points. And yet Sabonis had 14, 21, and 9. And they had players step up like McDermott had 21 points and things like that. When it comes to the Wizards Celtics, that was very entertaining at first, but, obviously Jason Tatum had 50 points and Kemba Walker had 29, and they combined for 79 out of the 118 points. And what was really interesting about that game the most is that Beal and Westbrook shot a combined 16 of 43 from the field, and they shot 1 for 10 from 3. So they combined for 37% from the field. When your 2 stars are combined for 37% from the field, you're not going to win many games, especially in the playing game when you're playing a pretty, quality team like Boston.
I think what I noticed from that, it comes back to what I said on the pod last week, Trevor, is that I think that Bradley Beal might be struggling a little bit and adapting back into the lineup coming off of injury. I had thought that was potentially going to lead to the Wizards losing to the Pacers, but the Wizards were able to make it in and put in a strong showing against Philadelphia earlier this week.
Yeah, so all in all, Eastern Conference, and we can go through the Western Conference plan when we get to the West in terms of playoff preview or playoff, not really preview. Now we've got a full slate of games now. But all in all, I agree with you. All 3 of you guys, or all 2 of you guys, sorry. The term predictable just, I think, is going to be overused this year in terms of how the play-in felt. I don't think the Eastern Conference is necessarily how the play-in long-term is going to swing. I do think it sticks around, but yeah, I'll get to more how I feel about the Wizards and how they turned out to become the 8th seed when we get to the Philly matchup. But just if you were watching the East and that was your first taste of playoff basketball as a fan, you probably weren't super impressed, but it was exciting nonetheless that we even had it. It was probably the most viewed, end of season games. I know the regular season finished as one of the highest viewing regular seasons of all time because it really did matter where some of these teams finished. So all in all, I loved it. And even though the games might not have been perfect or great, it was still an awesome, fun time to watch.
Nick, what are your thoughts on the NBA keeping the play-in going forward or kind of scrapping the play-ins after using it for 1 year?
I'm not a fan of the play-ins, to tell you. I understand why they did it, but I hope they just go back to the regular, just 1 through 8, just go at it.
It's interesting, straying from the 2 of Josh and I, who have been very clear all season that we love it and we think it's a great idea. Obviously, I think this year kind of highlighted the good and the bad. So I think this is a good sample size for the NBA because we had some bad injuries. We had some injuries that were caused from some teams playing way too many games in too short amount of nights and playing too close to a prior season and all that. We got to see the good and the bad, and quite frankly, some of the ugly as well in some of that gameplay. But I think it's that's interesting. I like to hear that, but I don't know. I really don't. I think if you've surveyed fit fans right now, I think it's still probably leaning towards keeping it, but not a clue what the NBA is going to do, to be honest with you guys. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where that decision comes.
Well, I mean, my guess would be that the play-in has probably been a pretty roaring financial success, so I wouldn't guess that it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt a lot to me like watching the first 4 in the NCAA tournament, a handful of games that are played in Dayton, Ohio before you get to the round of 64. Felt like I was watching that, but still good nonetheless. I still get like, while I'm like in support of the play, and I think my primary complaint might be that you're kind of pushing the boundary with like 20 teams essentially making the playoffs out of your 30 in the league. 16 were already making it, and so now it's like a 20-team postseason.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that I like you said, financially, I think we're going to see it stick around for quite some time, as long as it works logistically long term. If you guys don't have anything else, I'm going to roll right into Sixers Wizards since we're on the topic of the Eastern Conference play-in. The Wizards were the team to survive. We're going to roll right into just how that first game went. It was a 125-118 Sixers win. I'm going to roll through just a couple things in case the listeners for some reason didn't catch the game. It was the earliest game of the playoffs. It was technically the playoff opener. And Tobias Harris lit it up with 37. And he was the story of the game, no matter how anyone else played good or bad. Tobias Harris was the story with 37. My biggest takeaway is the Sixers team looks really good. Josh, and is obviously, I think, still my favorite pick in the East. Josh, what was your takeaway from the Sixers?
I was impressed by how well the Wizards did in the game. I thought it was more of a game for longer than I expected it to be. I thought that Ben Simmons would get involved on the scoring end for Philadelphia a bit more. He didn't shoot very much, but finished with 15 boards and 15 assists, so I think he made his impact. Yeah, I mean, the Sixers are dangerous, especially when Tobias Harris, who is that third scoring option and third star in Philadelphia, takes over the game like he did, is going to be something for other teams to worry about down the stretch.
What about you, Nick?
No, I agree with everything, and both of you guys just said. And obviously, Simmons didn't really need to get involved in the offensive side so much because Tobias Harris was just cooking the whole game. When you have a guy with a hot hand right off the bat, and he was hot the entire game, you just ride with it. And I think it's going to be very hard for Washington defensively because if they do, like you've seen it, they were doubling Embiid. Embiid's actually a pretty good passer, and not only that, the Sixers are loaded with shooters, absolutely loaded with shooters. Like they got Seth Curry, George Hill could hit some threes, Tobias Harris could hit some threes. Their whole lineup could pretty much, even Joel Embiid could step down and knock down a couple threes, So, and I like that they brought in Doc Rivers. I feel like that coaching change really put this team and really made Embiid the player he is now because, when Brett Brown was there as a coach, like he was letting Joel Embiid shoot 8-9 threes a game. That's not really the case anymore. Doc Rivers is playing Joel Embiid to his strengths. And look at him now. He's an MVP candidate. I don't know if he's going to win the MVP, but for him to be a finalist, he's had an unbelievable season. And Ben Simmons is probably Defensive Player of the Year. I know Beal had 33 points, whatever the case may be, but Ben Simmons defensively, he could change the whole game just defensively. Ben Simmons is an unbelievable player. I see this as a quick series, 5 at the most. I think, Philly's just too powerful for Washington, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave a little love to Simmons there because I'm going to defend him, as Josh knows and as listeners know already. I'm going to defend Ben Simmons till he absolutely gives me no other reason not to. I'm a big fan of Ben Simmons, not Big Simmons. Simmons did shoot the ball very poorly, over 6 from the free throw line and was 33% from the field. However, though, he was still plus 18 plus minus because he contributed 15 boards. 8 of those were offensive, to be clear. But he was all over the boards and 15 assists. So he was able to hit those shooters like you were talking about. You did leave out, of course, Tar Heel Danny Green. Had to give the shout out to the Tar Heel Danny Green there. And look, this team, I agree with you. Yeah, this game, this series is not going much further than 5. I don't think it goes any further than 5. Game 2 for them does open up on Wednesday at 7. That will be the early game on Wednesday. I think this series is just the Sixers are going to be a better team because they played Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. I'm so used to saying those two together for the last couple of years. But Washington just shot really well. They hit every shot, and the Sixers still were able to get it done. This seems way too deep for them to lose to this Wizards team.
Moving right into, I guess we'll look at the other play-in team in the East and look at how the Celtics did against the Brooklyn Nets in the first game. I'll be honest, like for the first batch of games, this one was probably the one that interested me the least. Everything that happened, it was a pretty, predictable finish. Trevor, you and I have talked about that we think that the Celtics will only go as far as Jason Tatum will take them, which, I mean, showed in his 50-point performance in the play-in game and got them through. He was 6 of 20 against Brooklyn and an 11-point loss. And Kevin Durant had 32 points, Kyrie Irving 29, and James Harden 21. The next leading scorer was Joe Harris with 10 for Brooklyn. So the Nets are looking about how we expected them to, although we would probably expect them to score a little more than 104 in the next games going forward.
An honest question for both of you. Did either of you actually watch this game?
No.
I watched a little bit more than half of it.
Okay. I did not either. So that shows you where we were on this in terms of how this game was, because the only thing I took away from it in totality was just obviously, like Josh said already, he kind of beat me to the punch there. The Knicks, dude, I cannot talk today. The Nets, to be clear, the other team in New York, the Nets were just, this was probably the most ISO ball, or some of the most ISO ball they've played all year. According to Second Spectrum, this was tied for third for the least amount of passes they've had in a game this year, surprisingly, with the big three playing. So the fact that they play ISO ball and get the job done like they did against the Celtics, don't let an 11-point lead fool anybody or fool you. This game was a lot farther apart than I think, even without watching it, going back and watching it live. This game was a lot farther apart than 11 points.
Yeah, I mean, with this Brooklyn team, I think they're still trying to figure it out a way, because even though, you have KD, Kyrie, James Harden, they're probably 3 of the top 12 best players in the league. They haven't played that much together this regular season, right? I don't know what the stat is, but I don't know if they even played 10 games together with all 3 of them on it. There's games where KD has been out a lot of the times, Kyrie, likes to disappear sometimes in the regular season. We all know that. And, James Harden is just coming back. So, they just have to they got to figure it out right now, and they did look a little shaky. And, Boston was leading in a lot in this game, but, Brooklyn just took it over in the second half of the game, and that's what happened. I think Brooklyn's they're going to get better and better and better every game. And in my opinion, they're going to win the NBA championship this year.
That's funny that you say that, because I was actually going to ask you at the end, since we don't know your answers. We follow each other on Twitter, so maybe be able to see some of your opinions. But I was actually going to ask you MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, championship, and maybe one other award. And I think you've already hit maybe 2 or 3. You hinted at MVP, maybe, but I will get. I guess if you want to just go ahead and say it, because there's not really any. I guess there is some MVP candidates in this. Not any finalists, obviously, but. While we're in the middle of that, do you have an MVP pick that you want to go ahead and put on record?
Yeah, Stephen Curry for me is my MVP this year. And I think the reason is, when you look at the finalists, right, you see Embiid, Jokic, and Steph. If you took all 3 of those players out, Philly still makes the playoffs. Denver, if they had Murray, still makes the playoffs. Warriors would even win 15 games. Yep. When you look at it from that aspect, and Stephen Curry, he literally carried his team pretty much alone. I mean, look what he did this year. I mean, look at the way he was shooting the ball too. And even in these playing games, he was unbelievable. He just doesn't have the talent to work with that Jokic and, Embiid has. So my opinion, Steph Curry's the MVP this year.
Anything for that, Josh?
I'm not going to get into an arguing the MVP conversation, because we have other playoff games to go through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have the different perspective after Trevor and I gave away the MVP to Jokic a couple months ago. So,
not a bad pick.
Yeah.
If Jokic wins, I'd be happy for him. So,
lastly for me on the Celtics, just on a note for this series that obviously ends in 4, I think, unless Tatum drops 82 points. This Celtics team, I don't think even this might be debatable, but I just, even with a healthy Jaylen Brown, I don't see this series. I mean, I don't even see him getting a game if the Nets are going to continue to get better each and every game. And this isn't really a test. They just need to stay healthy, get through 4 games and go.
I see him getting at least a game with a healthy Jaylen Brown.
Okay.
No Jaylen Brown. It's with Jaylen Brown, it would have been fun to watch, I think, from my perspective. Yes. Because Jaylen Brown he might not be as good as Jason Tatum, but he's right there, in my opinion. He's a great player, and I wish he hadn't gone down because it would have been fun to watch in the playoffs. But yeah, Brooklyn just has a little too much power.
All right, Josh, we rolling into Knicks Hawks or Bucks Heat? What do you want to start with, Nick?
We can start with Miami Milwaukee.
Fitting.
What game one was very interesting because both teams didn't really shoot good from the field. Jimmy Butler was shot 4 of 20. I don't know what it was, 4 of 22 from the field. And, with Giannis, coughing it up at the free throw line and, Chris Middleton ends up in, the game when he shot and things like that. Most of the game, it was kind of a struggle for both teams. Both teams are very, very well coached, not only offensively, but defensively. These are two very good defensive teams. And I feel like it's going to be low scoring, like 109, 107. It's probably going to be somewhere around there every game, pretty much. I don't think you're going to see a team score like 120 plus in any of these games because, like I said, they're both really good teams. They got good veterans. They got some star power, and they match up pretty good against each other. So I'm very excited that this is the best Eastern Conference matchup in the first round, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, it's that big rematch from last year that Milwaukee's got a real chip on their shoulder from getting knocked out by Miami. I watched the game tip off, and I remember seeing Miami gets the ball, they come down, Duncan Robinson drains a 3. Milwaukee takes it down court, Giannis misses a layup. Come back down, Duncan Robinson drains another 3, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. It's just exactly how the whole series went last year.
Yeah.
And eventually, Milwaukee pulled that close game, but as you were talking about, you would definitely expect, especially with a defensive team like Miami, to kind of contain the scoring in the series, play maybe a little bit slower to try to keep Milwaukee in check. But that being said, Milwaukee's almost at 70 points in the first half tonight's game too. So maybe things just aren't going. That game plan Miami rolled out in game one that worked pretty well. It's just not there for game two.
I'm over here on mute screaming. Someone mentioned it. Someone mentioned the fact that they were up like almost 30 at one point just now. It's 67 or 70 now, as you just say that, 70-42 with 3 minutes left in the second. So somebody's probably going to hit 120, and it might be the Bucks by the end of the first half at this rate. No.
Well, they're being helped by the fact that Bryn Forbes has 19 first half points in 11 minutes played. So
wow,
that's just not something you can predict, I guess, from Miami side.
Look, playoff competitors, you're going to get, or playoff competitive teams, you're going to get performances out of guys like PJ Tucker and Bryn Forbes and Bobby Portis that are going to change the game. But what's really important and impactful is just for me, the game takeaway from game one, regardless of how I feel like the Bucks lost control as Bryn Forbes just puts up another 3, and he did miss that one actually. I feel like no matter how that game were to have ended, I still feel like even if Miami won that game, as I watched that game, and I watched almost the entire game, I missed most of the first quarter, but then just progressively, I feel like I watched that game more and more. As I watched the Bucks, basically to me, no matter the result, I feel like they were taking control. I feel like they were still in full control of how it was kind of like those Celtics teams where in the 80s where they were kind of like that was the first team that came to my mind that I know was very controlling of how they played. When they were able to control how they played the game, this Bucks team, I feel like no matter how that game got out of hands, I feel like they were going to be able to bring it back in. I don't have anything major, any big stats to back up any of that. I just feel like if you're going to get 25 points per game out of Goran Dragic, you're not going to beat the Bucks in anything, less than. I mean, you're going to have to go 7 at this rate. So, and the Bucks are proving that they're the better team so far in game 2 tonight. Listeners will know the result as of this.
Yeah, they score 46 points in the first quarter.
Wild. I mean, it is some of our picks out of the East, so I hope they continue to do this.
Yeah, I have Milwaukee going out of the Eastern Conference, kind of in a shock 3 seed getting through. And I think just the biggest thing that I had to take away from in game 1 is that finally, because this kind of wasn't the case past couple of years, when a team is able to put in a game plan to slow Giannis down, the supporting cast is kind of insulting for an all-star like Chris Middleton. The other players from Milwaukee can step up and get them through to a victory. I think that's going to be important for Milwaukee's playoff run.
Yeah, that supporting cast scored 27 and led the game in scoring. So, Chris Middleton probably appreciates you taking that back. He had the game high in terms of on the Bucks side. Anything else from either of you on Bucks Heat before we roll into, I believe it is Knicks Hawks, which is, in my opinion, the most exciting of the first games.
Yeah, let's go to Knicks Hawks. Trevor, talk to us about that prediction that the Knicks were going to sweep the Hawks.
I knew you were going to do that to me. If it's not a sweep, it is 5, and I think it's still 5. And you're going to come on next week and torch me when it's 2-0 Atlanta, right? Is that how it's going to go? No. Dude, the New York Knicks still looked really good, but you cannot win a playoff series. Not against the Hawks, not against anybody. You can't win a playoff series when Alec Burks, I can't even say his name right, is your leading scorer. RJ did play really well. Randall played really well. Randall will continue, even if he had a little bit of an off night. He still proves to me, and I wanted to make sure I said this because I haven't all season, and I should finally say this on record, who deserves all NBA second team. I don't think that's a debate, but just wanted to make sure I said that. For
Very deserving.
Thank you. I'm glad that you've agreed because I was like, oh my God, please don't put me on an island there. But regardless, I still feel that way. You're not going to win a game with a guy like Trae Young just absolutely taking over. And I can't repeat what he said because we are a clean podcast, but man, you fire up. If that game was in Atlanta, there's probably a parade in the streets after a game 1 win after what he did. So and the listeners can go watch that if they'd like. But takeaways from game 1 of probably the most exciting playoff game this playoff so far.
Yeah, I mean, I could start off. Obviously Trae Young had, a heck of a game, with 32, 10, and 7. Bogdanovich has really stepped up for Atlanta, as of late, especially at the end of the season. And now he's progressing it in the first game of the playoffs. He's been really very good. And obviously they got Clint Capella holding it down low, one of the best defensive bigs in the league. Mm-hmm. There's just so much talent on this, there's a lot of scoring talent on this team. Even if Trae Young has a bad shooting night per se, John Collins could go for 20. Bogdanovich could go for 20. They have guys like Gallinari. They got Lou Williams could go for 20 off the bench. This team is very interesting. I got the Knicks winning the series, but I think Atlanta's going to at least win one more game. I think it'll at least go 6.
Well, I mean, my perspective is just give me 6 more games like that and I'll be happy. I don't care who wins. That was the best game I saw all weekend or all week. Play-ins, everything. It was wasn't sure who was going to win. I just knew that every team, there weren't many missed shots in the last 3 or 4 minutes. It was just back and forth. If they play like that for the rest of the series, this will be what we'll be talking about for most of the remainder. I mean, it might be the most exciting series in the playoffs so far. I think for one thing that is going to be big for the Knicks to be able to take the series and kind of take back control, they're going to need more of that veteran leadership from Derrick Rose. Rose was really the reason that they kind of stayed in the game there down the stretch. He was running the offense. They're running it completely through him. And even tying the game at 107, nobody on the court for the Knicks looked like they wanted to take the shot to tie the game up at 107 until the ball got back to Derrick Rose and he finally took the shot to tie it up. They're going to need more of Derrick Rose really stepping in to lead that team if they're going to get somewhere.
You can't go unnoticed and I'm going to famously, Knicks fans are going to hate me. I'm just going to say this. I'm going to build them up to bring them back down really quickly. The Garden was awesome. It was electric. I think it had to have been, regardless of, COVID situations in every individual city and state in the NBA right now. The Garden was electric. It was sold out for game 1 and it will be sold out for game 2 as well. Somewhere just north or shy of 15,000. Spike Lee's jumping up and down, going crazy. Glad to be back in there. However, and a big however, Knicks fans are going to hate me for this, but Trae Young made Frank Ntilikina just look like he should have not been drafted a few years ago. And Knicks fans obviously were very disappointed by that pick. So Frank Ntilikina, of course, only playing a few minutes, and the most infamous was the final shot that Trae just completely blew by him, went around Taj Gibson, hit the floater in his face. So yeah, look, this series, look, I may be wrong. I know I said 5, but you guys are talking me more and more into scaring me into saying 6, but I'm going to stick with 5. Obviously I can't change my answer now, but I am going to stick with 5 regardless and just say that this Knicks team are going to get back to the defensive prowess and how they're going to, like I told Josh last week, they're going to have to slow the game down. Being the slowest team in the league, they didn't show that last night or the night before.
Yeah, the end of that game last night definitely wasn't slow. They decided to get in a shootout with the Hawks for like the last 5 minutes with a lot of sprinting, a lot of threes being put up, and that's not the style that the Knicks won with all season. So I have to get back to that if they want to win.
All right. I guess we're going ready to, unless I'm forgetting something, we're going to roll right into the West. And we'll start like we did at the beginning for the East with the play-in, because the West play-in, contrary to the East play-in, was exciting, and the NBA probably made billions and billions and gajillions of dollars off one game. And everyone, as Nick laughs, and he knows exactly what I'm referring to. We'll start with that one, because I think the other one's just at this point, even though how the Grizzlies came out, are going to play the Jazz, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Oh my gosh. Golden State and LA. It's been that long since we've recorded.
Yeah,
I don't even want to say first thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, that game was very interesting because, the Lakers started off very, very, very slow. They were down at half, and, they just had no answer for, Steph Curry the entire game. But, LeBron and AD were much better in the second half. The supporting cast was much better in the second half. People might not want to bring this guy up, but I think Wesley Matthews was a huge part in the second half. He really just brought the energy to the Lakers back in the second half, defensively and things like that, taking some charges, diving up for loose balls and things like that, and yeah, that was pretty much the game. Like with the, it was going back and forth. Obviously, LeBron hits the clutch three, and Lakers were just able to get stops at the end, and that was it. And they were just the better team in the end that executed better. So,
yeah, I guess my first thoughts is, man, the Lakers really have looked bad in their first two playoff games. I mean, they beat the Warriors, but
everyone expected them to.
Yeah, it should have been by a much larger margin.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron and AD kind of sleepwalked their way into that first game, and they won because LeBron hit a very clutch three, but he has said he was seeing three baskets. So I've just got to say that it was at that point luck. He threw the ball up as the shot clock was running out, and it went in. And that's why the Lakers are the 7th seed.
Yeah.
If they're going to have a chance against the Suns, which I don't think they will, they've got to play with some more energy, like Nick was saying.
Yeah, what kind of goat stuff is that? Where I saw three baskets, so I aimed for the middle one, and it went in. He even understands that it was, I'm not saying it was lucky, but it was, as a fan, of course, I'm going crazy at 12:15 Eastern time in my living room. But yeah, talk about an NBA Twitter evening. That was just, it was unreal. I feel like there was 60 different opinions of a game that, by the way, made the NBA, to be clear, hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, this was the reason that play-in may stick around. Obviously, you're not going to get lucky every year and get, a LeBron and Anthony Davis led 7 seed against a Steph Curry led 8 seed. But it did deliver. And this is exactly what Adam Silver is sitting in his box going, yeah, give me more. keep going, guys. Let's get this game close down to the end.
Okay. Trevor, to clarify, one basketball game doesn't make hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you realize how much $100 million is?
I know. I want to make sure people realize that this game was a cash cow. And quite frankly, the play-in as a whole was a cash cow.
Well, yeah, this game specifically was a cash cow. It was LeBron James and Steph Curry in a single.
Which, by the way, was built up for days on Twitter. Like, every day seeing who's better, who's this. Like, it just, I mean, it is what it is. It was, as a fan, I was excited. I wasn't excited and I was clear all season about this. The team I did not want to play was, of course, Utah, as the best defensive team in the West, regardless of how the Lakers finished. And then Phoenix, who, Nick might not know this, is my pick out of the West. So, as a Lakers fan, it's scary to think. And I said this weeks ago. This was when I went and ranted for 20 minutes on Chris Paul being an MVP candidate. The Phoenix Suns are probably going to take care of the Lakers in 5. I joked in our Twitter or in our group chat, Josh and I's friends group chat a couple of days ago, Phoenix in 4. I don't actually think that, but
no, Phoenix in 5.
Phoenix in 5. It's probably Phoenix in 5. I had them in 6 to be clear prior to the playoffs, but it's probably 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because even though the Lakers only lost by 9 or whatever the case may be. It felt like that the Suns were up by 20 points the whole game. And obviously Anthony Davis just wasn't existent, really. DeAndre Ayton held his own, and especially, offensively too. He was able to do what he wanted. Devin Booker is just, you're not going to be able to stop him. And, as the Lakers are starting to double, Phoenix has some snipers too. So if that's going to be their strategy, they're going to take the ball out of Devin Booker's hands. I'm sure he's going to have no problem with that because he's got shooters and, he's confident with it. And obviously you got Chris Paul, who's probably the best orchestrator of offenses in the league still as a point guard. And this was a bad matchup for the Lakers, especially the way that they've been playing. You can't just snap out of it right away, especially if you're playing a number 2 seed like Phoenix. So if Lakers want any chance of winning this series, number one, they got to win game 2. This is a must-win game. If they go down 2-0, I think the Suns are going to win at least one of those games on the road, and they'll take care of them 5, maybe 6 at the most. But Anthony Davis has to play like the Anthony Davis we all know.
We can't also just brush over the fact that we were, maybe a slightly different fall, a slightly different turn of the clock, father time, whoever you want to blame on that injury and that fall that ended up being only a contusion. But we're the severity of a shoulder injury away from this conversation being completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who was very clear about how he felt about Chris Paul, I'm happy to see he's healthy. You never want to see a guy like that go down. It's talking about shaking up NBA Twitter. That did as well. And it's just, thank goodness, a guy like him who has had playoff injury struggles in the past, most famously in the Western Conference Final against the Warriors. It's glad to see, even as obviously if I was a fan, as a fan, I'm going to be like, well, it's going to be easier to beat them. I still don't want a guy like that to go down. And I'm glad that he's healthy and able to make this series exciting.
So, yeah, DeAndre Ayton missed 1 shot.
So I guess we're just rolling into 2-7. We can skip.
We've already been
go back
talking
to
about
1-8. Yeah, we might as well. Go ahead. Keep going.
He was 10 for 11 against Anthony Davis the whole game. Nick was right about it being like non-existent. DeAndre Ayton might have just as well been at the rim just dunking over and over again. If DeAndre Ayton can play like that every game, I may go and change my pick and have Phoenix coming out of the Western Conference because it feels like in Phoenix they've been waiting for DeAndre Ayton really to really just get in his rhythm and for everything to click, and it feels like it all clicked for him in that game.
I'm going to use your DeAndre Ayton point there as a segue into, at some point I wanted to bring this up because there's multiple opportunities to bring this up. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton outplayed LeBron and AD. Luka put up 31, 11, and 10. We'll get to him in a moment. Trae Young dropped 32, 10, and 7. We already talked about. Jason Tatum had 50. John Morant and Steph Curry. John Morant put Steph Curry and the Warriors away. That was a pure example, and I'm going to use Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Like I said, I love Devin Booker. I've been on record saying he's my favorite young player in the NBA. This is just truly, we're seeing dominance from our young generation. We're seeing the next generation come in, and old heads are going to say like they're worried about the next generation, and we might have a 4-point line in 15 years, whatever it may be. Who cares? But this young generation is putting on a show in guys like John Morant, Tatum, Young, Doncic, and Booker and Ayton.
Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts about the Phoenix.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah,
I'd like it to get a little more interesting, but
yeah, if Ayton plays like that every game, man, this could be over quick. Especially, everyone knows. I think Anthony Davis is the key though, because he's their force defensively too. He's the one that holds down the interior, or he's one of the best defensive players in this league, and that was not Anthony Davis on the floor. I don't know who that was, but that wasn't normal Anthony Davis. And if we start seeing normal Anthony Davis, I think the Lakers still have a chance to win this series, but man, it's going to be tough, especially if Ayton's playing like that, because we're going to get out of Devin Booker and Chris Paul. So
Davis sure needs to step up because they sure as heck ain't getting out of Drummond and Gasol. I can tell you that. So
yeah.
Or Harold's playing well.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like the Lakers have been kind of in cruise control since they won the title in October? That they kind of just rested on their laurels after getting a championship?
100%.
Because it just – I don't see how the team went from – it's not even been a year since they were that dominant and had such a great run.
Hey, I've been on record many times to you and to, off recording and on recording that, and this, I'm so happy we spent so much time on the Suns beating my Lakers. But that all I cared about was as a fan, I went on cruise control because I went back into podcast mode once they won the title. But they had to do it for Kobe. So I'm glad that they got it done. And, this year is just the year that if they're not fully healthy and they're not playing well and they're coming up against a Phoenix team, it's just not their year. And it is what it is. I mean, LeBron, he said he's never 100% again in terms of how the ankle felt, but it's LeBron James until he truly shows us a sign of decline. And Anthony Davis, of course, in the middle of his prime. This isn't one of those like hit the panic button after this season if they lose in the first round to Phoenix.
I agree with that. I got nothing else to say about that.
Yeah.
Utah, Memphis, Josh, go ahead. You're Utah Jazz.
So it's not exactly what I expected out of game one from Utah. I also didn't expect the Utah Jazz to pull Donovan Mitchell off the court during shoot around and tell him that he couldn't play. Look, Memphis, this was their third playoff game. The Jazz haven't played in over a week. They stunned them by 3, and I expect the Jazz probably to win the next 4 now that Mitchell's going to start game 2. Yep. I mean, my takeaway really thus far from playoffs, my biggest takeaway is Memphis looks good and their young core looks great. And that stuns a much better than them Utah team, but I don't think that's going to happen again. Now, if Utah wins game 2, I might have to start rethinking things. But, if Memphis wins game 2.
I couldn't agree more, especially when you're looking at, game 1, John Morant's going to do John Morant things. Yeah, he had 26, 4 and 4, but Dylan Brooks was sensational. I mean, the guy had 31 and 7, and other guys were stepping up too, like Valanciunas. Even in the playing game against San Antonio, didn't he have a 20-20 game? Like it was 23 points and 23 rebounds. It's something like that. So he's been playing good basketball, and he's another guy that has lots of experience in the playoffs in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And he's been deep in the playoffs, in the Eastern Conference Finals. He's been in the semis multiple times and things like that. They had some, good runs in Toronto. So it's good that they have a player like that on their team. And, and Grayson, even though Grayson Allen only had 5 points, but, he's looking better. He's shooting with more confidence. And, another guy, Kyle Anderson, he's got to make deep runs in the playoffs in San Antonio. So they got not only they got some good young talent, but they equal it out with, veterans that have made it deep runs in the playoffs. So I like where they're heading in the future, but Utah's going to win in 5. I mean, you see now that Donovan Mitchell was ticked off, he put it on social media, so obviously they're going to let him play and they're going to win the next 4 games. I feel like so.
So Mitchell is confirmed, as both you. Mitchell is confirmed to play game 2, even though game 2 is not for another day. I wish I had more to talk about with the Jazz and Josh's awesome pick out of the West. Hopefully they just prove it and get it done. And my biggest thing is, Josh, I'm going to put you on record for a moment. When we mentioned the Grizzlies last week, you mentioned Jonas Valanciunas, John Morant, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson Jr. Who did you forget? Do you remember who you forgot?
I didn't forget him. It just wasn't the first 4 names I said. You talked about it right after about Dylan Brooks.
Dylan Brooks, the same Dylan Brooks that put up 31. I just had to make sure that Dylan Brooks got some love, as he was basically the reason that he's the reason they won that game. There's no other way to put it.
I gave him some love just now.
I know. I'm glad that I just wanted to make sure that we put that on record to say that Dylan Brooks is an awesome young player, talking about young talent. And this Grizzlies team is going to be good for quite some time if they can all keep these pieces together and healthy.
Yeah, I got nothing else to say when it comes to this series. I just, as soon as, Mitchell comes back, I just think it's wraps. I just think they have too much firepower for a young team like Memphis. Donovan Mitchell's going to be doing Donovan Mitchell things. You got Michael Conley, you got Rudy Gobert, you got guys that shoot threes like Joe Ingles, you got a guy like Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench and that could give you 18 points a night, and you got Derek Favors, Royce O'Neal is that energy guy that they have. And I just think they're too much for Memphis at the end of the day. Even if Memphis somehow won one more game in this series, it won't go any further than that. So
I guess we can move into the last two, which we could say. I mean, the other two series in the Western Conference had also had game one upsets. Yeah, I guess it's funny to look at the game ones in the Western Conference. The lower seed won 3 out of the 4. Let's start that. So that was interesting. But I guess we'll start with the Portland Trailblazers. Really kind of dominated the Denver Nuggets.
I actually have Portland winning the series. I have Portland in 6. I feel like not having Jamal Murray is really going to hurt, especially, just the guard play alone from Portland's going to be a problem for Denver. They're not going to be able to match up, with guard play. And Portland is, they're healthy. They got Nurkic, they got Robert Covington, they got Cantor back. If Carmelo could just put up at least 15 a night for them, because we were going to get out of McCollum and, Lillard every night. They're probably going to score, 25 apiece, every game for the most part. And now they got Norman Powell. That was a huge trade at the deadline. That was probably the best player at the deadline that able to get and add to this team. And I get it, Denver, they got Jokic. He's probably going to win MVP this year. He had 34 and 16. You got Michael Porter Jr., who's been unbelievable. He's really taken he took a leap at the bubble, and things like that. But now with Murray out, you could really see where his potential is really, really going. And I love this kid. He had 25 and 9, and, Eric Gordon is a solid player. He had 16 and 8 and things like that. But you really didn't get, besides those 3, you really didn't get that much contributions from anybody, really too much. So if you're not going to get that much contributions, because Portland, I just think they just have more depth right now than the Nuggets. So that's why I'm picking Portland to win a series, and I'm not surprised at all that they won game 1 in Denver.
Yeah, guys, I'd be lying if I say I had anything other than just this series it's probably going to, I agree with Nick. I think it's still going to be Portland, or it is going to end up being Portland, no matter who Jokic is and how he's the MVP. Portland, Josh brought up a good point last week, and how Portland just plays really well in these types of series and these types of games. They show up big for games like this, and they're going to show up big for a team that literally is Jokic against the world. And Porter Jr. is going to have to play better overall. But I'd be lying if I said I had anything else. I don't even remember what Josh and I had, to be honest with you. I had the papers over there somewhere. But yeah, this Portland team, no matter who makes it past this, they're not beating the 2-7. So quite frankly, I don't think it really matters. But
so I had Denver, I think, in 5 or 6 originally, but after watching this first game, I don't know about that prediction anymore. I think I feel like a lot of times when I look at a Portland series, I have to forever put an asterisk of if Damian Lillard decides he's going to be the best player in the NBA, then the Portland's going to win. And I mean, I think that Damian Lillard over the past 5 or so years has probably been the most clutch guard in the NBA. That's what Trevor's talking about in my thoughts, that Portland shows up in these situations. Damian Lillard comes to play in the playoffs, and he always has. And that's just, it's not a good situation for Denver to be in right now. Because like Nick said, looking down their roster after Jokic, Porter, and Gordon, who else is going to really contribute for that team?
To be on record and clear, in terms of Nuggets Blazers, I had Nuggets in 5, so complete 180. Josh had Nuggets in 6. So, yeah, this is probably going to be at least the smallest segment in terms of a game that we're going to talk about in the entire episode. But, yeah, this is just – it sucks to see Denver in a position that they are, because with Murray, I was talking to a friend of ours off record a few hours ago for this, and he sent me a little graphic about – just panic button and where, we are in terms of these teams if they lose round 1. And Denver, people are going to have them a lot higher than they should be in terms of hit the panic button, because but with having injuries like this across the board, and Murray, of course, being the biggest reason that they're probably not going to win the series, but it just sucks. It's one of those things that, you don't want to see that.
Why would Denver hit the panic button?
No, I'm saying people are probably going to see them lose the first round and think oh, Jokic couldn't get it done. We're going to see crap like that. You get it, right? But I'm saying that I'm defending Denver in the sense that we shouldn't see that, because with a full healthy team, this Denver with Jamal Murray could have easily come out of the West this year. And I don't think that's a debate. I think Denver could have been a scary team out of the West.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, there would be no reason to hit the panic button in Denver. They have a core just as young as Phoenix's core, and they're missing their star guard. They're going to be right up there as being the 1 or 2 in the West next season, probably, regardless of how things turn out here and whether Portland races past them with their offense. But Denver will be fine going forward, long term. All right, so I'll own up to the fact I had the Clippers beating the Mavericks in 4, so got that one wrong. So the thing I thought about when I saw that game, what was happening, so the Luka Doncic that I was so confident would be in the MVP race at the start of this season has finally showed up. Like, finally, the Luka Doncic that I thought was going to be the MVP decided to arrive and took over the whole game against the Clippers. I think part of that was helped by the fact that Kawhi and Paul George just did not shoot the ball well at all. I think they both shot close to 40% or sub 40% from the field, and they took a lot of shots. What did you guys think about the game?
Yeah, I mean, especially when I could just go straight to the fourth quarter, with the Clippers, they just missed so many free throws late in the game. When the game was 1 or 2 points, it was by possession. Like, they just kept missing free throws. And not only that, obviously Luka was unreal. He was also my pick to win the MVP before the season started. He had a triple double. Not only that, but if I'm the Clippers personally, you cannot double him. And the reason that being is he's such a sensational passer. He's going to find that weak side shooter open for 3 all series long. He doesn't need to score 30 points to win this series. If you double him, they're in so much trouble because, Finley Smith hits so many threes. Tim Hardaway Jr. can knock down some threes. They got even Porzingis had a bad game, right? He had a bad game. He had a bad shooting night, and they were still able to win this game. And they got some contributions from Jalen Brunson. He was the big factor, especially in the fourth quarter when he had those back-to-back and one layups, things like that. And he was, knocking down free throws and things like that too. I like this Dallas team. Before the series started, I had the Clippers in 7. I think it's going to go 7 because both of these teams are equally matched. I feel like, they got their star players. They got good role players. They got guys that can, shoot the ball. And this is a very intriguing matchup. But yeah, I got the Clippers in 7. That's what I had before this series. I'm still sticking with it.
I had Clippers in 5, and I do still think it actually happens, believe it or not. And I'll tell you why. I am going to, so you mentioned the teams. Like, you've got and I'm going to clarify in terms of, I think it's star, and Luka showed that. It's Luka versus the world. Now, I mean, who better right now than Luka in this case? He got the game 1 win. But I am going to trust Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in a 7-game series against, quite frankly, a lot of people. And how they're also one of the best 3-point shooting teams this year when they are hitting them. So regardless of the free throw misses, this team is going to get hot, and I think they're going to be able to outscore Dallas, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Obviously, defensively, I think it's not even close. The Clippers are a better defensive team. Josh and I multiple times this season hit the panic button on the Mavericks, and to see them win game 1 is ever bittersweet. But this Clippers team, I just trust way too much. A week ago, I was saying that I wouldn't be shocked if they were the pick out of the West, even though I obviously had Phoenix. So this team is also go ahead.
I know I had the Clippers coming out the West.
So, and exactly. So and look, I agree with you. I think this series could go 7, but I trust this team to just get together. This is the most time this core in terms of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Morris, Beverly. It's the longest they've ever played together because they did a lot of the resting this year like they always do, but this was the most games. Like last year, obviously they collapsed in the bubble, but they got it together, and they're going to rally around each other and get it done. I don't foresee this team. I still see this team probably making the Western Conference Finals, but they're going to be hard to beat if they get going and hit threes like they did all year long.
I think it's really important too that they finally got a leader. I think that was the biggest problem last year for them. Like, yeah, they had a lot of, you want to say quote unquote dogs like Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, they had Kawhi, Paul George, Patrick Beverley. Like they just didn't have their true leader because that's not Kawhi Leonard's personality. Kawhi Leonard's just Kawhi Leonard. He's not like a true leader, and they needed a true point guard. And now I think they got that in Rondo.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to really uplift that team, not only with his, playoff experiences and championship experience, but just to uplift this basketball team. And, you see what he did in this game too. He was finding, players wide open shots and things like that. Yeah, they weren't really knocking him down, but they're going to start knocking him down. This Clippers team is hungry. They remember what happened last year. They remembered all the shit that they talked. Oh, excuse my language.
No, you're good.
they remembered all the talk that they had, after being the Lakers' first game of the year and all that. They were tripping, but after blowing that 3-1 series lead, I think they're really hungry now, and in my opinion, they're the pick to come out of the West. So
yeah, I don't really have much more to say on the Clippers. I think, like Nick said, I think Rondo is going to be that difference maker he's talking about. I remember seeing at the deadline, Rondo going to the Clippers. It's not a real sexy like regular season trade, but it's one of those things you look back on, you get to the playoffs and you see a guy with all that experience playing and winning a lot of games in the playoffs and being a significant part of that. And you start to realize why the Clippers went out of their way to bring Rondo to the team. But that's all I got on round one or first game one.
Yeah.
All right. So we got your MVP. We got your defensive player of the year. I was back and forth all year with Gobert and Simmons, but just after the final 20 games of the season, I had to go with Gobert and win it 3 times, even though I do think Simmons is the best perimeter defender in the league. It's not even close. I think I would say, can you give me 6 man? But yeah, he was announced tonight. I don't know. I don't think either one of us or any of us mentioned that in the Jazz segment, but Jordan Clarkson was announced as the 6 man of the year winner. I'm excited to say that I got that right because I really do think he was the difference maker for Utah. But I guess the last one we had was probably coach of the year, right? And rookie of the year. I'm excited to hear that because those two are actually sorry, Josh, they're pretty close.
No, it's close.
Yeah.
So
no, you could go ahead, but that coach of the year, that's a very tough pick. There's a lot of coaches that are very deserving. I'm pretty interested to see what you guys have to say about that.
Well,
we had no real consensus. My thoughts was that it should go to Quinn Snyder from taking a team with essentially the same pieces, and he took them from about the 5th best team in the West to winning the regular season in the West and being the number 1 seed.
I had a guy who's not a finalist. So moving on. No, I had Steve Nash, who I think is not going to win in the first year, unfortunately. Or I should have looked back and thought that being a first-year coach, but he did lead that Brooklyn team. Let's be real. KD and Harden and Kyrie led that Brooklyn team. But Steve Nash did a really great job facing, injuries and them only playing 7 games together as a unit. But at the end of the day, they can't give coach of the year to a guy who led the second best record of a team with 3 superstars. So I had Steve Nash, unfortunately, but rookie of the year, or actually, sorry, Nick, coach of the year before we go to rookie of the year.
No, I had Quinn Snyder.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah. I mean, he's like the last few years now, like he's been so like underrated as a coach. When people, talk about like the elite coaches in the league, like he was never that person to be mentioned. He was always like the next one down to be mentioned. I think now people should really taking the serious note that he is an elite coach in this league and he knows what he's doing. And just, I mean, you hit it on the head. Like, they were a 5th seed last year, they keep improving every single year with the same core, and they got them at the 1 seed and who knows, they might make it to the finals this year. They were unbelievable this regular season, especially the way they could shoot the ball is scary. And if they could shoot the ball in the playoffs like they did in the regular season, I wouldn't be shocked if they came out the West because they moved the ball so well. Like, even though Donovan Mitchell, he is a star, like they don't have a superstar on that team, but like they just know how to play team basketball, plain and simple. I think they always make that extra pass. They're always doing the little things with this Utah team, and I've never watched a Utah team that didn't give effort for Quinn Snyder.
Yeah.
So I love Utah. They could come out the West, but Quinn Snyder's my pick for Coach of the Year.
Before we go to Rookie of the Year, I do want you to go back and listen to, was it 2 episodes, Josh, ago, or was it 1?
I don't know what you're
when we did MVP ballots, where we did MVP ballots. Was that 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks ago. Josh and I did MVP ballots. If you haven't listened to that, Nick, I would have some homework for you. I always have homework for the listeners. It's always a fun little blurb I throw in somewhere.
I don't give them homework.
Go listen to Josh's convincing effort of the second place, or if he had a ballot vote, right? His second place MVP vote. I want you to go listen to that, and then you can tweet us your thoughts. Lastly, Rookie of the Year. Who you
better
got?
give him a timestamp because
I have to. There's timestamps in the episode, as always.
Yeah.
Always. Rookie of the Year, my friend.
Yeah. I gotta go with LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, when you think about it, like, he was unreal, and especially before he got hurt. It's kind of like the Lakers situation the first year with LeBron, even though they didn't have the chance, they didn't have a playing game. The Hornets were a 4 seed, led by a rookie. Think about led by a rookie. They were a 4 seed, and then they fell all the way down to 10 when he came back. Or they were 8, and then they lost, and then they went down to 10. But no, LaMelo Ball was unreal this year. In my opinion, the Warriors should have picked him. I was the one. Everyone was like James Harden. I'm like, no. Imagine LaMelo Ball on the Warriors, running and gunning, fast breaking. He could bring the ball up with Steph and Clay running the wing. I would have loved to see that. That would have been some showtime in Golden State if LaMelo was on the Warriors right now. But yeah, LaMelo Ball, I think he's just the clear Rookie of the Year this year. Look at his stats, look at everything he did, look at what he did for the city of Charlotte, and it's just, they got a bright future now. They nailed this pick at number 3. So I got nothing else to say about that.
Josh, before you say anything, can I just say that he described entirely for about a minute and a half there your worst nightmare, LaMelo Ball on the Golden State Warriors?
Literally truth be told, Minnesota should have picked LaMelo Ball.
That's true.
But thankfully for Charlotte, the Minnesota and Golden State both passed on who I thought was obviously the best player in the draft going into it.
I agree with that. Yep.
Everybody I thought that Charlotte was going to end up with Anthony Edwards for months because the word was, oh, Minnesota's high on LaMelo Ball. They're going to pick him number 1. And I was like, well, darn. And then within that week, the analysts are like, well, no, it looks like Minnesota wants to pick Anthony Edwards and got all the hope. Anthony Edwards had a great season, but obviously Hornets fan, I'm going to be biased. And I also think Ball was insane. I can't say as much that the Hornets collapse was all not having LaMelo Ball there. Gordon Hayward went down the next game after LaMelo went out. And Gordon and LaMelo were kind of there together. LaMelo just always provided a spark for the team when they couldn't get moving on offense. And unfortunately, kind of at the back end, he didn't recover his shooting touch in that last couple weeks after the wrist injury. But he's got a full offseason to get that back.
Yeah, I won't drag on Rookie of the Year much longer because Josh and I are already on the record. But I have LaMelo Ball. At the end of the day, no matter how close to 20 points per game Anthony Edwards is and how he did actually make the Timberwolves not nauseating to watch, the eye test has to matter eventually, and it's LaMelo Ball. And if you watch NBA games, you will understand that it is LaMelo Ball. And obviously the guys that vote on this award watched a lot more basketball than most of us. So they hopefully will see the same thing and put stats aside. Josh had a convincing case about 3 months ago on how he might be the best 19-year-old ever. That's in the tagline of the episode. If you want to go listen to that.
His first 2 months of the season, he was on pace for a better rookie season than LeBron's. It was just statistically true.
Wild, right?
Then he got hurt. But.
Rookie of the Year, not even close to me. I won't delay trivia any longer. It wouldn't be a Two Pointers podcast episode without a trivia segment. I wanted to make sure since Nick's on here, we're going to test his NBA trivia knowledge, as well as Josh. Do you have any clue what the score is for you and I? Do you have it written down? No,
I do not.
Okay, we'll figure it out after the episode. I'll have time to figure that out.
I think it's 6-4.
There's a half point in there somewhere for some reason, but regardless.
6 to 4.5.
Yeah. And who is that? I actually have no idea. Okay, exactly. No. I'm just going to roll right into some playoff theme trivia. For Josh to get the points, it's got to be 6 or more, and I'll get to why in a moment. 6 out of 8. And then Nick, I just want to see how many you get right. If you want to do a 6, if you get 6 out of 8, I'll give you a point too for next time you come on. We'll keep tally of your trivia. And whoever wants to go first, I'm going to roll right into it very quickly because we're getting to where I'm going to have to be miserable tomorrow editing. Here we go. This is actually, the number doesn't actually matter. I'll read the number later, but this is team specific. Whoever wants to start, Josh can go first. Nick, doesn't matter. Nick's our guest. Nick, go first. It is the most finals games won by franchise. You can go top to bottom, 1 through 8 if you want an order. If you think you can go in order, but you can just name. If you can name 6 out of the 8 most won finals games. So like teams that have made the finals and they've won X amount of games. The numbers don't matter. I'll do those in a moment.
Okay.
Out of 8.
Out of 8. So I got to pick 8. Oh, wow.
And no, you can't look at another screen that has the teams on it.
No, I swear. No, I'm not. Obviously, the Lakers are one of those teams. Boston Celtics is 2.
I'm not going to say anything, by the way, to be clear, because that would obviously spoil Josh's chance. I forgot to do that. So just name your 8, and I'll tell at the end. Okay.
So Lakers, Boston. The Bulls is up there. What else do I got here?
There's not necessarily a time limit, but I do have to edit this podcast.
Yeah. Miami.
You have 4 so far, or 4 you've named so far.
Yeah. San Antonio. Golden State.
6.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Come on.
Okay, 2 more.
I don't know if I can. Man, this is gonna kill me.
You might be 6 for 6. You have no idea. That's the best part about this segment.
Wow. Well, I'm probably wrong, but I'm gonna say the Cavaliers. I know I'm probably wrong.
All right, Cavs, and then last, final pick. It's tough on the spot, man. This trivia segment is gonna make people sweat. I knew it was fans' favorite segments. I think Josh is ready to just rattle his 8 off. I feel like he's got his 8 already.
He's probably gonna. Yeah,
he's probably gonna burn through these. I bet.
Yeah,
all right. It's gonna be fun.
I'm just gonna go with. I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna say the Knicks. I know I'm wrong. I think I got 6 out of 8 right, probably.
All right, Josh. Before I give any results, go right ahead, my friend.
Well, like Nick said, the Celtics and Lakers are easy.
Can I just be real with y'all? You got those right.
Yeah, I was going to pop over to the Warriors because they went and won so many times, like a long time ago, before like the dynasty recently. The Bulls, obviously, with 6 championships, so that's at least 24 right there. So that's 4 teams named. San Antonio has won a lot of titles. They win a lot. I was going to say the Sixers.
I was thinking that too.
I like the camaraderie. I like the chime it in. I had that. I love this. This is good. All right, you got 2 more.
I've named 6 teams.
Yep, you got 2 more.
Like Nick, Miami had come in my mind, but I don't think that they have won that many because they were before the 06 team. They were awful, and I know the 06 team was the first time they ever went to the finals, so they've only been to 5 finals. Oh, yeah. This may seem like a bad pick, but I know they have 3 titles, and this is more to their 90s dominance, the Pistons, where they're a lot. And the Bad Boy Pistons had those 2 titles, and then they also won with
and they beat the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq, yeah.
They had Chauncey and Rashid and all those guys.
Yeah.
Last one.
That was 7. Trying to think. There's some of the teams out west who –
see, that's what I'm saying.
Finals a lot, but just haven't won all that much.
Josh, I'm going to tell you this. This is for 8 for 8.
Man, maybe. Oh, really?
I wanted that reaction so bad. Yes.
So the Pistons were in there. That's fantastic.
I'll get to the total in just a moment. That was a good one out of nowhere. I did not think you were going to get Pistons. That's wild. As much slander as I give the Pistons.
Okay, I'm between 2 teams.
All
I'm
right,
going to put them both out there, and then I'm going to tell you which one I'm picking. But I'm between saying Miami like Nick and saying Utah. Utah never won it. They've been a lot. But I'm going to go with Miami because if I had the logic, the Pistons win those 3 titles. Miami also won 3 titles, so I'm going to have to go there.
All right. I am going to roll through from top to bottom, and then we can get out of here because it's late. From top to bottom, you got your Lakers. This is obvious. These numbers are outdated, so they don't matter. I'm not going to name the numbers because I know this is a few years old, but it's not going to change the order or the total team. I do know that for a fact. I double checked before I said this question. Lakers are number 1 as of this statistic. The Celtics are 2. And so far, that's you both got that right. The Warriors, you both are now 3 for 3. Let's see. So you got that one. All right. The Sixers was the one that Josh snuck in there. That was you were. I saw you. I saw you when you were going, Nick. You were between it. It was there. I knew it. The Sixers are followed by the Bulls. Shout out to Nick's Bulls there.
Chi-town, baby.
The team after the Bulls is the Detroit Pistons. I kind of spoiled that with the 7 for 7 so far. The second to last team. Shout out to them Knicks. The Knicks are 7th all time in NBA Finals wins.
No way.
You got that was a dude. I had to hide behind my microphone. I was like, no shot.
When was the last time they made the finals?
The 90s, 99 for sure.
That was the last team I said. Like, I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm right. I'm just going to go with the Knicks.
To be clear, I don't know how old specifically this graphic is. The Heat very well could actually be, but the Knicks are still on there. The Heat are probably still behind because they did get, I think it was like 4-1 a couple of those different series that they lost. And then lastly, the San Antonio Spurs. You both got that one. So the only ones that were technically wrong were both of you had the Heat, and then Nick had the Cavs. The Cavs was a good one because they haven't made any before LeBron, but they made one with him and then a couple there. They went a long series with Golden State a couple times. It could have been close.
They had those good teams like in the late 80s, early 90s that almost made the finals in the East, but they couldn't get past Boston.
Yeah.
It was close, though. I'm sure they're not far out of there. Well, hey, it's been fun. I'm going to throw in not the disclaimer, man. I'm tired. I am going to throw in the shout out, of course, at the end, just making sure at NABL, Enable on Twitter. Nick, anything else you have to say on the way out? Since some people actually, we do see how far people listen, and there are people at the end here who made it this far. Anything else you want to say about yourself, the league, anything else?
No, nothing really. Like, again, I appreciate you guys for, having me on the show, not only talk basketball, because I love everybody who doesn't love the game of basketball, you know what I mean? But, to talk about a league that a lot of people have so many questions about just because it has never happened before. Your Special Olympics is every state has a Special Olympics and things like that. And, those Special Olympics, they change so many of those kids' lives and things like that too, which I love what they do. But, I just think they should have more opportunities in life to succeed in general. And this is bigger than the game of basketball. Like, I want to see like colleges and other businesses out there see what Enable could potentially do. And they can actually give these kids more chances in life to succeed. Like, they could get more, college opportunities, to actually get a degree whenever they want to get that degree in whatever field that they want to. Not only that, like they could get corporation jobs and things like that. They just don't give these kids, patience. You just got to have patience with these kids, especially like I have a brother with autism, right? I see the challenges that special needs kids go through on a daily basis. I keep in contact with so many kids. This is what I do in my free time. I love hanging out with special needs kids because it just brightens their day. Whenever you see them smile, like it's like the greatest feeling in the world. Like, I just love everything, not only what I'm doing, but I just loved how my whole life, like in my free time, I always dedicated, to helping the special needs community in any way I can to raise awareness for them. And, I'm really excited for the future for Enable. And I can't wait to come on this podcast again. And obviously I'm going to keep you guys updated, because you guys have been like an unbelievable, supporting cast. So I really appreciate you guys for real.
Yeah, Nick, thank you for coming on the podcast. We love hearing about Enable. I love hearing about more of it and what you're working on today, and definitely want to keep in touch and continue to hear about like what you're doing and what you're building, because I think that's absolutely awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just hit my line. I'll always reply. So
yeah, dude. yeah, so everybody listening, follow Enable, go support, get a t-shirt. But as for what it is, I think that's all we got. Nope, Trevor's got something else.
I just want to, I mean, you can round us out still. I just want to make sure I put this out there. There are still 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and the Bucks are up 94-62.
62. Oh my Lord.
The listeners will hear this after the result, but I just wanted to make sure we close out and say, by the way, somebody's hitting 120 tonight, and I was wrong about the second half. They're going to hit it by the end of the third quarter, maybe. We'll see what happens. All right,
Wow,
man.
That game's already over. But,
Yeah.
Wild. All right, Josh, close us out.
This has been the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Trevor.
And I'm Nick.
And we will see you soon.
See ya.